Hey there, Lions! Did you know that you can get access to exclusive bonus audio content by joining our paid support group, the Lions of Liberty Pride? For as little as $5 a month, you can help us grow this program to new heights. Learn more by heading over to lionsofliberty.com/support.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, it is time for another edition of Felony Friday right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Felony Friday is, of course, a show where we focus each and every single week on exposing injustice in the broken criminal justice system. This is episode number 85 of Felony Friday, so that means you'll be able to find links and notes to everything that we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about a lot of different stories this week. You can find all of them at lionsofliberty.com/ff85. And my last two shows were solo shows. They were a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, but there's so much to talk about this week that I was afraid I might just pass out and not be able to handle it. So I got to bring on some help. I gotta make a call to the Lions of Liberty bullpen and bring in some assistance here. So I've asked, of course, Mark Claire to come on the show. You guys all know Mark. He hosts our Monday show here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. And we're going to talk about some really, really important felonies trending in the news. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about. So Mark, welcome back to Felony Friday.
What's up, Odie? And yes, I'm ready to roar.
You're ready to roar?
Is that not what you ask on this show? I get so confused. We have so many different formats, so many different hosts. I don't know what's going on. This used to be a simple show where I just show up and talk to people, and now we have all this crazy stuff going on. Felony Fridays, Electric Liberty Land. What is the world coming to here? We must be popular.
And we have an episode on Monday of Libertarians in Living Rooms Drinking Liquor coming up, right?
Darn tootin' we do. I believe you'll be on that one. I'll be on that one. A special guest that will remain unnamed for the moment, I think.
I'm actually practicing right now. I got a Bell's Two Hearted Ale I'm sipping on for this episode. So maybe this is sort of a Felony Friday edition of LILDO.
It can be, because I just so happen to have a little, I'll say it the right way for everybody this time, Bullet Bourbon in front of me right now. Frontier whiskey.
How did you say it last time? Bullet?
Yeah, I said it like it's spelled, like an idiot. They're the ones that are adding extra I's to their words, and then I'm the one that's the idiot, apparently. But whatever. And if you're a member of the Lions of Liberty Forum, you might know about the little conversation we're talking about, because we have a lot of little fun conversations in there. So before Odie can plug it, I will. Head over to Facebook, plug in Lions of Liberty Forum in your little search bar. It should pop right up. Come and join the fun if you haven't already, because it is fun.
And that's why I love bringing you on Felony Friday. Well, other than all the other stuff, talking about felonies, but you do the plugging for me. I don't have to do anything.
I'm a plugging machine.
It's fantastic. I just talk about felonies. That's all I have to worry about.
The first thing everybody heard on the show was me plugging something.
Exactly. So let's jump into talking about some of these felonies. Enough of the chit-chat here. And this first one...
Oh, you don't want to do like 40 minutes of chit-chat Spangle style?
We could do a little We Are Libertarians chit-chat back and forth, talk about our wives and girlfriends and what's happening at work. You want to do that? I don't know.
Let's get into the felonies. We'll save that stuff for the Pride.
Fair enough.
See, always plugging.
This first story, and I actually just watched it. On purpose, I waited to watch it until right before we were going to record, because I knew it was going to be freaking ridiculous to watch and really gruesome, and I didn't want to watch it and have to watch it again or 2 or 3 times. I didn't want to So what it is, this is a video of a cop essentially executing a guy in Las Vegas. The story, if you're not familiar with it, and we did talk about it, of course, in our Lions of Liberty forum this past week, took place in Las Vegas. A naked guy outside of a church was carrying a gun, and there's the video has 2 different angles in it. It starts out with a above angle. I guess that's from a helicopter. I don't know. Maybe from I don't know where they are. But anyway, the first video is from above, and you can see
drone.
A drone, maybe. You can see.
Yeah,
probably was a drone actually. You can see this naked guy walking with the gun, and he's walking real slow. It looks like he's messed up on something, on drugs. Who knows? Maybe he was just Just crazy. And
definitely not in the right state of mind.
Yeah.
I think we'd all agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact that you're naked in public is already just indication number one.
Yes, that's the first indication of something is wrong. You're walking around naked in front of a church.
Not that I'm any kind of prude, don't get me wrong, but in our modern repressed society, it's not a normal thing.
No. You can't just walk around outside of churches butt naked with a gun. But anyway, that's what this guy was doing. And the video doesn't have, well, it does have sound, but in the first part it's weird. They're talking through it, and you can tell that somebody's directing this guy, but you can't tell what they're saying. All of a sudden, he puts the gun down and starts walking direction away from the gun, and you see finally he's walking towards a officer with a dog right there, a canine officer. So the guy walks over, and he's walking. They're giving him directions. They're telling him to lay down. He doesn't. He gets spooked by the canine, I guess, and they said in the article that the canine started attacking the police officer, which it was a little confusing. It said that the police attempted to sick the canine on him, and then in the excitement, I guess the canine, kind of bit the officer, but just the fact that the canine was being a canine, it scared the guy, and he started to go the other way, which happened to be in the direction of the gun that he had dropped, which is how they justified shooting him. Yeah, and the second part of the video shows exactly that. It's from the point of view of the cop that shot this guy, and it is fucking sickening. It's horrible to watch. You see this guy turn around and start running when the dog starts barking. The guy stands up and shoots him. One shot, goes right down. Just really, really rough to watch. And I mean, my first thought watching this, and Mark, you can chime in too, is why wasn't there an officer there? As soon as he puts the gun down and gets like 5 feet away, why can't someone just sprint out and tackle him? He's butt naked. He's not armed.
It sounds like for whatever reason, their plan was to sick the dog on him to take him down, and then they would go in. But this is a naked guy. I mean, there's not even a chance he's concealing something. There's no chance, unless they think he's got something shoved up where the sun don't shine that he's going to pull out at the last second. But I think I doubt that's what was going through the officer's mind. It's really tragic. It's tragic, especially because it seems like the officers were called again. We've seen this several times. They were called because he was seemingly suicidal. He was not, obviously we only have the information in the article to go by, but from what I see here, it seems that he was threatening to kill himself, not threatening to harm anybody else. And then once he put the gun down, he was no longer even a threat to himself. And they are, of course, justifying it by saying he was running towards the gun. Even the headline on one of the articles I linked to, I think within the article, or one of the videos posted within the article, the actual title of the video was police kill man as he's running towards gun, which really seems disingenuous because they really made it sound like he's running towards the gun. When I think watching the video, I guess he is physically running back in that direction, but that's just because it's the direction he came from. It's clear to me he's just running from the dog. I mean, he's scared.
Right.
There's no indication he's running to grab the gun and start shooting people. And if he did that, I could totally say that the shooting was justified in that case. I'm not one of these people who's going to try to be hyperbolic. And there's probably a time 5-10 years ago where anytime a cop shot somebody, I would presume that it was wrong. It was a wrong act. But really, as we grow in our beliefs and our philosophy, we have to try to look at these things in a little more nuanced way. And look, the fact is, even if you hate the police, you hate the idea of how they're funded, you hate the idea of the laws, there are some situations where cops need to defend themselves because they're human beings with rights as well. So if there was a legitimate case where he was an immediate threat to them, I could very well say that would be justified, but I really don't see it here.
Yeah, the only way would be if he was still holding the gun at that point and was pointing it at them. I mean, running with your back turns towards
his back is turned. I think that's the important thing here. I mean, his back is turned running away. I mean, I don't see how you could claim, and we felt that was an immediate threat to our lives because he was running that way. Again, the claim just being, I guess, that he was running towards the gun.
Yeah, and I think this is the 16th, I think that's right, 16th police shooting in Las Vegas this year. So that is not good. That is something that's pretty freaking disturbing.
You would think of all places that it would be okay to walk around naked. Like Las Vegas might be towards the top of that list of anywhere in the United States, but apparently not.
Yeah, apparently not. I mean, you walk down the strip, they pass out those little postcards and business cards with the nudity on it. Yeah, you figured it'd be okay, but yeah, I guess not. So we're gonna pivot here and talk about, talked about on this show a bunch lately, it seems. Talking about just legalizing drugs. The need to legalize drugs, be it marijuana, be it heroin, be it cocaine. Bring it
Well, Odie, if you believe that, surely it must be because you're a heavy drug user, right?
Yeah, I don't use drugs. So.
Oh, and yet you still want them legalized. Interesting.
It's so weird that I do get some pushback on these shows when I do talk about drugs, legalizing drugs, about how I can say something like that, having a young daughter. How could you say you should legalize marijuana or heroin? You have a young daughter. You don't want her using that stuff. And I don't. I don't, of course, especially, she's 2 years old now, but yeah, I don't want her using that stuff, when she's, a young child growing up. I don't want her using marijuana. I certainly don't want her using heroin or cocaine. Once she gets older and can make her own decisions, she can decide for herself. On the marijuana aspect, I'd never want her using heroin or cocaine or meth or any of that stuff. But it still makes sense to me as a person who values individual rights, as a person who is, I believe I'm a rational human being, who understands that...
Questionable, but we'll let it slide.
Who understands that it's safer and it's better for everybody involved when you legalize drugs. And the story we're going to talk about here is there is actually a heroin vaccine, and it hasn't been tested on humans yet. In 2013, it was tested on rats, and the rats actually stopped pressing the levers to receive their heroin hits. So if you can imagine some rats on heroin, I don't know. That's just funny to me. Just rats just stop taking their
just
heroin.
Need one more hit. We need like someone with talent like our boy Dan Smots to draw up a heroin out rat. Not to make light of this. But
probably looks like any other rat. But anyway, they've also tested on...
I picture him
monkeys.
like Rizzo the rat from the Muppets.
Rizzo the rat. Rizzo the rat. I remember Rizzo the rat.
There you go.
They've also tested on monkeys, and that showed the test went for 8 months, and the drug stopped having an effect, and they showed no high or cravings or anything associated with that anymore. And they also did they tested a vaccine against fentanyl, which of course is what heroin is often cut with, and it worked with fentanyl as well. The problem is they can't get funding. There's no pharmaceutical companies. There's no hedge funds. There's not anybody who wants to fund this vaccine in order to get FDA approval. And a disappointing part to me is they've tried to crowdfund this too, and they've made, in terms of crowdfunding, they made almost nothing. They made like $40,000, which covers a little bit of their patent work, but is nowhere close to what they need in order to run a study. So a couple different things here, Mark. What are your thoughts on the FDA aspect of this first, I guess, to start?
Yeah, when I first was going to read the story, I presumed before reading it that this was going to be the FDA just saying you can't do this, you can't have this vaccine, or for whatever reason, or it wasn't approved. And I thought it was actually pretty interesting. The reason is still tied to the FDA, but it's because they can't get the funding. And of course, the funding is what they need to conduct the tests on humans. And I imagine that's because the funding is to get the approval to get the tests on humans. I guess they have to raise the amount of money that they would need to do all the tests that are required by the FDA before they can get the approval to, obviously go ahead and go to the next level. So even though it's interesting that they can't get the funding, I think that because that's obviously sort of a free market thing, you might say. But I also would say you wouldn't need nearly the level of funding that they need if it weren't for the FDA and all their onerous regulations. Because this guy has people who are calling him saying, please let my son take this. And then this article starts with like a really heartbreaking story about a guy who died of a heroin overdose after he was clean for a while. So sometimes it only takes one time getting back on it to pass away. So there's people that are calling him saying, I want to use this vaccine. Can we try it on my son? So, even though the one problem is that he can't get the funding, if the FDA would just let him give it to people and let them willingly serve as guinea pigs, that wouldn't even be an issue. You wouldn't really need funding. You would just need the vaccine and a willing person to take it and sign some paper saying they're willing to, take the risks of taking it after seeing the results that he has on the rats and the monkeys. Not like this is based on nothing. And they're willing to weigh that risk against their heroin addiction, which is very likely to kill them anyway. So to me, again, this is about the FDA just getting in the way of humans voluntarily interacting with each other to better humanity. These people are making humanity worse by not allowing people to have these voluntary exchanges. So fuck the FDA. Sorry, you made me drink whiskey, so I had to throw a little fight. And you cursed too, so that really inspired me to do the same.
This is going to be marked explicit. Oh, well. I will take exception to, well, not exception, just to add to one thing you said. I've actually been reading a book that it's called Chasing the Scream, and I'm I'm going to be talking to the author here coming down the road on a future episode of Felony Friday. But what it talks about is the one thing you said, Mark, is a lot of these heroin addicts are going to OD anyway and die, which that is the case in today's society, in today's current market environment with heroin being prohibited, because it makes the drug much more dangerous. It's mixed with fentanyl. The doses are uncertain. But back in the day, back before heroin and cocaine were made illegal, this stuff was mixed in cough syrup, all kinds of stuff, and people used it and they didn't get addicted. Some of them maybe did get addicted, but it didn't ruin their life. They were able to continue working jobs. That's not to say that I think they should start putting these drugs in cough syrup again, but it makes it a lot safer for.
Not to say they shouldn't either.
Makes it a lot safer.
We're agnostic on the issue of whether heroin should be in cough syrup. In a free market, that would be up to everybody, the cough syrup company and the individuals purchasing it.
I'll tell you what. I mean, there's sometimes, I don't know about you, Mark, but there's sometimes you're so sick with the flu that I would probably take anything to feel better. I mean,
if a little drip of heroin in my cough syrup would make me feel like 50% better for an hour sometimes when you're in the worst flu ever, totally count me in.
So that's right. That's going to be the title of this show. Put heroin in cough syrup. No, I'm just kidding.
It might be a good one.
All right. So I think we both agree that heroin should be legal, that this vaccine, that people should be able to go and get it and test it on themselves if they want to. That's definitely one way that we could start to find a remedy for this terrible opioid and heroin epidemic that we have in the country. I do want to take a quick moment here and talk about a story of a.
Could I actually touch on one more thing? I thought that was pretty interesting from that article.
Yeah, sure.
It stood out to me. It's kind of like a side note, but apparently, I guess just because I had never heard this before, I thought it was pretty interesting. I never knew that the polio vaccine was actually completely privately funded. It was a similar situation, actually, where they couldn't get the funding for the vaccine, and apparently 80 million people chipped in, and it was called the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which was later became the March of Dimes, because people would just toss in, if they had a couple pennies even or a dime, they would toss that in to this fund to get this polio vaccine. So I thought that was a really interesting example of how a free market, and when there is really a need for something out there in the population, and maybe not a government stepping in the way the FDA does today, you can get these things funded without government intervention and that sort of thing. So I thought that was really interesting, because I had never really thought about that before. I never knew that history of the polio vaccine.
Yeah, that is really interesting. It makes me think of something here. So Donor C, I'm not sure what the parameters are for their funding stuff, but
can they fund heroin and
can they fund heroin vaccines? I don't know. That
probably some legal issues there at the moment.
Probably. I don't know. But I tell you what, if I had more time in my day, I would dedicate some of that time to helping to crowdfund this vaccine.
If they can do a GoFundMe, I don't see why Donor C couldn't. It's probably out of their normal realm of what they do, but technologically and legally speaking, actually, it makes total sense that they would be able to.
Yeah, I have no idea, but maybe we'll find out. So I do want to talk about this next topic pretty quickly here. Then we're going to move on, and we're actually going to talk about North Korea. So stay tuned for that. Why are we going to talk about North Korea on Felony Friday? I don't know.
Teaser.
You'll have to keep listening. This is in Connecticut, and there's a guy there that he got a felony for carjacking back when he was a young kid, 16 years old, served 8 years in prison. After prison, he went to college, graduated from the University of Maryland, won a Harvard University fellowship, and he earned a law degree from Yale. So really smart guy, turned his life around, and now he's trying to get certified, pass the bar in the state of Connecticut. But Connecticut, they don't prohibit felons from becoming attorneys, but a felony conviction does create a presumption that the applicant lacks moral character and or fitness to practice law. So just being a felon presumes that they lack good moral character, even if all this time has passed and all these other great things have happened. So this guy has to go through this whole process in order to get approved, bringing in people to really, be witnesses to his moral character and give their recommendation that he should be a lawyer. And an interesting fact here, there's actually 3 states that ban felons completely from becoming lawyers: Kansas, Mississippi, and Texas. So if you have a felony in any of those states, You can never, ever be a lawyer. Doesn't matter how brilliant you are, how much you want to help people, how much you've turned your life around. Doesn't matter. You have no chance in any of those states, which I think is completely ridiculous. Mark?
That's a state law, huh?
Yeah.
In those places.
Thoughts on this?
Obviously, I think, it's interesting because you said he served 8 years in prison. I think that's something people should really think about for a minute here. Think about how long 8 years is. Now, you had Michael Santos on your show before. I had him on my show before. You had Felony Friday. He was sentenced to, I think, what was it? He was sentenced to, I think, 50-something. Ended up serving, I believe it was 26 years in prison or something.
I think 26 years.
Unbelievable. He went into prison as in his 20s and came out somewhere near 50, and has made a remarkable life for himself. Truly inspiring story. So please do check out both of our interviews, which I know, Odie, I just gave you a little more work to do for the show notes, but I know you'll post both those in the show notes. Indeed. But I believe I've read one of his books, and he basically in that book he goes through his entire process of how he changed while in prison and how he dedicated himself to becoming a better person so he'd be better prepared for life when he got out. And I mean, it sounds like this guy did something similar, or at least he really focused on himself and bettering himself, on his way out of prison. But think about 8 years. Now, Michael Santos in his 26 years, he said, I think it was after 6 years, it might have been 10, it's something like that. He said after 6 or 8 years, whatever it was, he could no longer improve. I mean, he had done as much rehab as he could do. He was a totally changed, better person. The rest of that time was basically just spent trying to improve his education still, but just waiting his time out. He had improved as much as he can improve. He was reformed at that point. So I mean, and the same. It sounds like this guy was on a somewhat similar path. Obviously, luckily, he didn't get nearly as bad of a sentence, but clearly, this guy has completely changed since he was 16 years old. Spent 8 entire years in prison again, and went through the process to not only go to law school and learn everything you have to, but pass the bar. So in theory, I think he should be granted this license. And then we get into this odd thing where we have government licensing involved. Now, in a private free market, our quote unquote utopian libertarian society, yada, 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 I think you'd still have all sorts of licensing, private licensing. And really, if private licensing organizations decide that they don't want anybody with a criminal record, well, so be it. But as we know, things aren't so simple today, or maybe they are more simple depending on your perspective, where you just have monolithic licensing boards, which are all backed by the power of the individual states. And they really have, in a sense, monopoly power over whether people can practice their chosen career or not. And so it's really sad that there's even the situation where this small board of people has the power to decide if this man can practice the career that he spent so much time studying for, is clearly prepared to based on their own tests that they give out. And yet his fate, is just in the hands of a few people and their opinions about his past actions.
Yeah, but at least with the bar, at least it's up to the state. It's not at some, federal, far-reaching organization. And it kind of has to be that way with the law because...
You going states' rights on me, bro?
No, I'm not really going states' rights. I'm just saying
sure.
It's a little bit better. It would be great to have, 2 or 3 different organizations in the state where you could get certified with and people could choose their lawyer based on that. And maybe with law, it makes more sense because there's so many different ways to practice law. You could be a criminal defense lawyer. You can be a wills and estates attorney. You can be, I don't know. You could be
a shyster lawyer like Rico.
You could be a shyster lawyer like Rico. I don't even know what Rico does, but I assume he's a shyster.
Yeah, that's what I assume. The details are very irrelevant here. He shows up somewhere with a giant briefcase with papers falling out of it and then, talks to a judge and leaves. That's all I know.
He somehow travels to Hawaii for work, though, which must be nice.
I'm sure there's a scam involved somewhere here.
Oh, man. All right. Well, with that being said, talking about scams, this is not a scam here. We're going to talk about our sponsor for today's show. You want to hear from these guys and check out these podcasts.
Hey guys, this is Roger Paxton, and if you're fed up with the government running every single aspect of your life, but you're not listening to the Lava Flow podcast yet, then what's wrong with you? Check us out at thelavaflow.com, or just go back to sucking up to the government. The Lava Flow podcast, striking the root every single episode.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
Hey everyone, the Johnny Rocket Launchpad is Liberty. Each week we strive to bring you the best guests in talk radio. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad delivers weekly interviews of noteworthy politicians, experts, and activists. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad is bringing the party to the Libertarian Party and launching ideas in your direction. Check us out at johnnyrocketlaunchpad.com, and you can hear me, Kurt Nelson, and the beautiful Heather Nixon talk about the ideas of liberty, rock and roll.
And we're back. We are back, and we're going to kick things off right now playing Is This a Crime? And Should They Do Time?
Is it a crime? Should they do time? Or do you think they learned their lesson from a hefty fine? Is it a crime? Should they do time? And since we have to ask the question, is the system down or out of line?
Bum, bum, bum. Is it a crime? Should they do time? I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but good tune.
I'm going to leave that part in, too, just for you.
Yeah, do it. You do whatever you got to do. You can maybe, even if you get fancy, you could mix it into the beginning of the song.
I'm not that fancy. I'm not that fancy.
Well,
I'm not able to do that. But with Is It a Crime, I want to kick this one off in style here. Do something we've never done. Well, actually, that's not true. I was going to say international crimes. I think we've talked about those in Is It a Crime. We had one in England, but I wanted to go.
We shouldn't worry about that, man. All the international crimes, those are just taking place in sovereign nations. Libertarians shouldn't be concerned with them.
Ooh, a little foreshadowing there. Your opinion on this one, I think. A little foreshadowing, maybe. We'll see. So what I want to talk about first is North Korea. And, of course, there's been tensions on the rise between Kim Jong-un and President Donald Trump and really the rest of the world and North Korea. And North Korea has announced some plans that they're thinking about firing missiles towards Guam, testing missile fire. And they did just announce, I think today, and we're recording this on Tuesday to show you behind the curtain, that Kim Jong-un said he's going to hold off on firing the missiles and wait to see what the U.S. is going to do. But anyway, just for the sake of argument here, we're going to assume that Mr. Kim Jong-un, as Rosie O'Donnell calls him, Sir and Mr.
Sir.
This freaking raging lunatic psychopath. Both of them. Rosie O'Donnell.
I don't care about people that disrespect the president. Like, I really don't have an issue with that. Like, I know people that are like, I will not call him my president, and I never have. I'm like, I don't care. Like, that's fine. But it bothers me when those same people call Kim Jong-un Sir. It's like, get your priorities straight, man.
This guy has literally enslaved millions of people for how many decades have they been enslaved? Well, he hasn't been.
His family, yes.
Yeah, his family.
The dynasty has. We could go into probably another hour-long combo about North Korea. I mean, it's hard to say enslaved or not, and in some ways they might. Many of them are so brainwashed that they're somewhat willingly enslaved. But well, we'll get into this some more here. Okay,
so let's say that he decides to fire the missiles. They're going towards Guam. And, okay, they're in the air. When that happens, is that in itself a crime? Has Kim Jong-un aggressed against the United States of America? Guam is a U.S. property. Is it a crime? And should North Korea get bombed in response?
Is it a crime? Should they get bombed? We're gonna need a remix of the song. Typically, we just question whether they should do time. But anyway, let's just try to break this down. And we have to really, I think, take a good look at this. We have to separate the fact that, yeah, we probably don't think that the United States legally homesteaded Guam. Like, I mean, there's certainly property issues involved here about whether you could say that our tax money should be specifically going to, defend Guam. Let's just put all that stuff aside. It's a totally different conversation. I just think we should look at the specifics of the way that North Korea acts in and outside of its country, actually. But we'll try to focus on the missiles right now. But I think even inside the country, you can argue that there are crimes worth intervening on. No, I'm not arguing the United States should be intervening. But you can definitely make the argument that human beings are justified to cease the action in North Korea, in principle, putting aside how disastrous the details of the United States doing that militarily would be. And I don't want to see that for that reason. But morally speaking, human beings should have every right to cease the actions that are being undertaken in that country in regards to the way they control that population, the way that they have slave camps, and all the terrible things that go on in North Korea. But that aside, think about it this way. If someone is threatening to fire a gun at me and has fired the bullet, I mean, I don't think I even need to wait till they fire the bullet. But yeah, I think it's very, very obvious that shooting a missile towards a place, say Guam, where people live, is a crime. Now they're not gonna when he's talking about shooting missiles at Guam right now, he's talking about shooting them into the water of Guam as a display of power. So maybe you can.
Yeah, but why should you believe him?
Well, sure.
Maybe he would say that and then just shoot him right at Guam. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if he's saying he's going to shoot at Guam and then takes actions to shoot at Guam, at the very least, Guam has the right to defend itself. And if their defense happens to be backed by the U.S. military, I mean, I don't know if that means that the U.S. military should then invade North Korea. I think that's a different story when it comes to should they get bombed. But they certainly, at the very minimum, have the right to take actions to cease the action of the missile. So somebody has that right. And in our current world structure, I mean, the United States is the quote unquote owner of Guam. So I don't know who else would be in a position to, shoot that missile down or what have you.
Wouldn't the missile have to go over Japan to hit Guam? I'm not a geography expert here, but I'm pretty sure.
I don't know, and I'm not a missile expert. I don't know if you guys know this out there, but I mean, I think often this might not be the case with something as close as Guam, but I think the idea, and I think that's the idea behind the ICBMs, that they actually leave the atmosphere and then come back down wherever they're supposed to be. I don't know if that's the kind of missile that goes to Guam. Maybe we can get Howie to provide some details in the show notes or something like that.
That's if you believe the Earth is a sphere.
Yes.
But if it's flat.
Right. Also questionable. Or it could just be a disc. But, this is a whole nother – this is a topic that you might hear about on a future Conspiracy Corner, which you can hear if you're a member of the Lions of Liberty Pride, which you can find more info about at lionsofliberty.com/support. You're welcome. I'm here for your plugs.
Fantastic. Well, you're just taking care of everything today. I love that.
To me, let's just, putting aside the details, a realistic threat of violence to me is in and of itself, in real life, if we pretend we're just on the street and not talking about North Korea and Guam, a realistic threat that includes brandishing a weapon and then threatening to use it and then taking actions towards using it. I mean, that's a realistic threat enough to cause defensive action in a normal circumstance. So morally and principally, it should apply to countries, and to governments and that sort of thing. Now, I don't think the people that all live in North Korea should be punished by a nuclear bomb as a result of it either. I think this is an extremely tricky situation because to me, it's very clear Kim Jong-un meets every definition of criminal, whether it's an international law, libertarian law, I don't care what law. At the same time, how many crimes are being committed if we actually go under a full-scale invasion? How many innocent people have to die to do what we'd have to do, what would have to be done to destroy, because you really would have to decimate their weaponry immediately. I mean, as quickly as possible. You would have to cause mass destruction in North Korea because North Korea will cause mass destruction in response to any attack. And I don't see any way that this happens without mass destruction on the Korean Peninsula and possibly spreading outward from there. And there's no good circumstance that can arise from any of this. That all being said, I do think this is hypothetical because every president in my lifetime has played this dance with every Kim Jong, every leader of North Korea. And it seems a little more real now because we view Trump as a madman, and that's the image he projects. I don't think he's a madman any more than that guy that actually has Mad in his name, Mad Dog Mattis. I think these are personas. I don't think it means they wouldn't do military action if the right circumstance occurred. If a missile hits Guam, I don't doubt that they would do something, and that's frightening. But I don't think that these people. I don't think that they're idiots, and I don't think they're tyrants who are bent on nuclear destruction. And I think everyone is playing a game here. It's a dangerous game, but it's the same game. Barack Obama has a quote where he said, "If you try anything, we will destroy your entire country." Bill Clinton said something to the effect of, and there's video of this that was going around this week, "Your whole country will be destroyed." So every president has the same rhetoric. Maybe they don't say fire and fury. Maybe Trump has different style, but they all basically play the same dance. North Korea has to play this dance because it's the only way it can basically survive in the world. And as Howie pointed out in the last Electric Liberty Land when he was on there with Brian last week, this is the U.S. set this precedent by making a deal with Gaddafi to give up his weapons and then deposing him and raping him in the street. So that's the message we sent to people that give up their weapons. So for that reason, Kim Jong-un would be foolish to give up his weapons. So I don't see that happen.
I agree with you, I guess. I don't know if I agree with everything you said. You said a lot of stuff.
A whole lot of stuff.
I will just add that it's so often in this conversation, people just forget about the people that are enslaved. They're effectively slaves in North Korea to this regime. They don't know anything about the modern society we have here in the United States. They don't know anything about, really having a full belly, being able to work for a living, being able to enjoy the simple freedoms that we enjoy every single day. And I can't talk about this anymore without mentioning the LP's tweet the other day, where they tweeted out saying that in North Korea, I guess, I don't even know if this is true or not, and they admitted so in the tweet, they were speculating that North Korea has a bustling marijuana industry, and marijuana is effectively legal there, which is just a ridiculous path to go down. Doesn't make any sense to me when this is just a dictatorship, just a horrible, horrible place. So I think one thing to remember with this situation is when our bombs drop down, and I think back to this when I was a kid. I will never forget watching on TV over Baghdad as bombs rained down over Baghdad, and I listened to the newscasters talk about it. And I never thought about the people that the bombs were dropping down on below. It didn't even cross my mind because nobody around me was talking about it. None of the newscasters were talking about it. Saturday Night Live was making jokes about it. George Bush, making whistling noises as bombs are dropping down.
I remember being at work in the second Gulf War, and we had news on everywhere, and all the bombs were dropping, and you see explosions. And somebody I worked with actually came up and said, "Wow, that's so cool." And even at that time, even though I wasn't quite the anti-war libertarian I am now, I just thought to myself, like, how can you think cool? Like, there's people in these neighborhoods, buildings, even if you think there's bad guys somewhere in here getting hit. I mean, these are cities. This is a city where human beings live. I mean, how can you think it's cool? I mean, I think that's when I really started to take on the anti-war position more, because I really started to think deeper about the fact that there's humans on the other end of these bombs. So maybe explosions look cool in movies, but this isn't a movie. This is people dying. And I mean, that's the same way we have to look at any war when people kind of recently say, "Oh yeah, you got to take out Kim Jong-un." Look, I want Kim Jong-un taken out. I think it'd be wonderful if the world was rid of him. But then we have to look at the reality of how that plays out, and there's not a way that doesn't involve the deaths of at least many, many thousands of innocent people, if not millions.
Yep, people getting blown to bits by these bombs dropping down. I mean, war is terrible. War is awful. And libertarians, the way that libertarians generally deal with war is, it's a sovereign nation. We're not going to touch it. No foreign intervention. Let's just stay here in the United States. And I get that. I understand where you're coming from there, because the system we have right now, our military, our defense, any way that we would try to help those people is funded through coercion. It's funded through taxation that you're not consenting to. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about both sides of the coin and talk about, in a better society, in a more free society, we should try to advocate for a way where we could help those people in North Korea to try to free them. And I don't know how we would do that, but I don't think we should just discount that and say they're over there in North Korea. That's their problem, really. We're not going to deal with it. We're not going to think about it. We're just going to stay over here and advocate for our own freedom.
Sorry, you just blew me away with your diatribes. No, I think we're basically on the same page when it comes to this stuff. In reality, we agree on the principles, but the principles and how they actually play out in real life involve killing a lot more people, and there's no good result to this.
Yeah, and I think we've beat this North Korea horse to death. I don't know if that's the right
horse
analogy. Okay, we got time for at least one more. Is this a crime? And this one, I watched this video, and I couldn't believe it, really, that this is happening in public schools. And well, I believe it, but it was really disturbing to watch. This happened in north central Ohio, so not far from me in Pennsylvania. The Crestline Elementary School. A 7-year-old autistic kid was on the playground, and apparently he did something the teacher and the teacher's aide out there didn't like. He was climbing on a fence or something like that. Those darn 7-year-old kids and climbing on things. I mean, who's ever known a 7-year-old to climb on anything? I mean,
I
all I did
still
when I
have
was
the
7.
urge like to just climb on everything I see. And I'm let's just say I'm more than 7. I'm approximately 30 years more than 7. So
Are you sure you're not Spider-Man?
I'm not sure. I didn't say I successfully climbed on things. I just get the urge. That's all.
Anyway, so this 7-year-old kid does the terrible, terrible thing of climbing on a fence or some such thing. The teachers reprimand him, and he's upset. He's a special needs child, an autistic kid, has some issues, obviously dealing with this being reprimanded. And you see the video. The teachers are dragging him, 2 female teachers, dragging him into the school. He's not walking, so his feet are dragging behind him. Cuts to another angle, and you can see both teachers carrying him. Cuts to another angle, and you can see the one teacher holding the 7-year-old boy by the foot and dragging him on the ground with his face dragging on the floor. And this story talked about how these teachers weren't charged with a felony because the way the law is written, they couldn't charge him with a felony, which I don't know if that's really here or there. I think the bottom line here is, Mark, in a society, is it okay for teachers to be treating children like this? Should this be a crime? And should there be some sort of time they serve or fine that they pay to compensate this child?
That is certainly the name of the game. And as you've insisted before, this is a game. This is a game show, even though we don't have prizes or winners. But I found something interesting, and this made me think about it, the actual headline of the article, where it says, "No felony crime occurred." And that was a quote from someone or other, someone who was investigating. And that's why there's no charges pressed. Now, to me, if we're just talking libertarian crime or right, yeah, to me, this is a crime, putting their hands on the child and dragging them around in this way. I certainly would not want my child's special needs or otherwise to be dragged around or manhandled by adults, no matter the circumstances, in this manner. I mean, even if the kid was going crazy and attacking other kids, you wouldn't drag him around the school. I mean, you would hold him down, or I don't know what you would do, but I mean, this seems so off base with anything that could be justified that this kid could have done, climbing a fence or what have you. And I guess part of it was the kid hadn't had his snack at the right time or something like that, and he was unable to communicate that, and I think that was part of the problem. And obviously these people were not trained well to be dealing with special needs kids. Another big problem there, to put your kids in a public school that might not have the proper adequate care. Maybe they do have a special needs person on staff, but who knows if they have enough people, and if these teachers were trained to deal with something like that. Clearly, to me, it doesn't seem like they were. But what I wanted to get to is the idea of the felony crime. And clearly, like I said, this is a crime. I don't know if there should be time. I think maybe compensating the child and the family in some way, as well as completely losing their jobs, which is not even clear that they will do. I don't think they should be allowed. I think they did lose their jobs, but it's not clear whether they'll lose their teaching licenses. I believe it's what the article said. But I did want to talk about the phrase felony crime, because we've talked before about how felonies just ruin people's lives. And while these teachers are absolutely in the wrong and maybe even should serve time, I don't love the felony label for really any reason based on the way it's applied in our society, because, like you said, you basically can't rehab from the felony label in most states. Like you said, this guy the guy from the carjacking earlier served 8 years in prison for a carjacking when he was 16, and 20 whatever years later, he's unsure if he'll even be able to practice law. So this felony label can have such a far-reaching effect, removing your right to defend themselves, although for some reason I just doubt these ladies are gun owners, the right to vote, all that stuff. I don't know if I would like the idea of giving them the felon label, because maybe these are women that would learn their lesson after a harsh penalty, after spending a lot of time paying money to the family for dragging this kid around. So, I mean, like I said, the only thing that stood out to me that I would question the crime part is that felony aspect, just because I'm not sure many people should have that felony aspect attached to them for their entire lives. I'm not even sure if everybody who kills somebody necessarily should have it follow them around for the rest of their life. If someone kills someone when they're 16, maybe when they're 60, we can remove the label if they've rehabbed themselves. So that's the only part where I give pause. But I do believe it's a crime.
I agree with you. I'm not advocating these women should be charged with a felony. In fact, maybe even this video being shared, their names being
it's
put
probably
out there,
enough. I mean, they're probably not teaching again.
Disgusting behavior. Yeah, it's horrible. Of course, you got to bring into you got to account for this child being pretty much abused by them. Maybe there is some sort of restitution there. I don't know, but I think the bottom line here is, and you brought this up in the forum. I think it was in the forum, maybe an email. But if you do have an autistic child, a special needs child, you really got to do everything you can to keep them out of public schools, because they are not going to get the care or the attention that they need. For the most part, I know there's exceptions, but stuff like this happening, that's really scary for parents out there that have children with autism.
Yeah, agreed.
We got time for one more quick one here, I think, and this is in your stomping grounds, and I just want to talk about it. And I don't know if you watch the NBA. I haven't watched the NBA since Michael Jordan played, so I don't know any of these players.
With you. I have not watched the NBA in a long time. And for those out there, I know what you're thinking. This has nothing to do with the color of John or my skin.
I love college basketball.
I used to like basketball. I had a time when I did, and I just don't now.
There's just not enough time. You got to prioritize your sports. I watch football.
Do you know how much pro wrestling I have
baseball.
to watch? I can barely fit in anything. I can barely fit in Liberty, let alone other
that's
sports.
That's like 5 nights a week, the pro wrestling, right?
It's 7 nights a week if you want it to be.
So anyway, this Zach Randolph, he was signed in the offseason by the Sacramento Kings, and he was arrested this past week in Los Angeles, the City of Angels, Los Angeles, on felony marijuana charges with intent to sell. And as soon as I saw this headline, I thought, wait a minute, isn't marijuana legal in California? How did this happen? How did this happen, Mark? How can you get arrested? And they're saying he could be banned from the NBA because the NBA has this clause where if you get convicted or if you plead guilty to a felony charge, then you're banned for a certain amount of time. So it just seems so crazy that in California you can get arrested and potentially convicted of a felony charge for intent to sell in a state where it's supposed to be legal.
Yes.
I don't get it.
Yes, let me explain. So the law that was recently passed legalizing marijuana, there's obviously, as you know, you've discussed this on your show several times. There's a lot of complications with it, and it's not a clean legalization or decriminalization. But it does come in waves. It gets enacted in waves. So right now, possession of marijuana is essentially legal for personal use on a small scale. I believe an ounce or less. You can have that on your person, and you're pretty much good to go. But selling it is not the licenses and all that to sell it. Those don't go in effect until 2018. So if you have above the personal amount and you're in that area of intent to sell, even after 2018, if you're not a licensed seller, if you're not someone who's a store with a government license, you still can get arrested for selling marijuana. In fact, there's kind of more codification about how they can arrest people for marijuana sales. But that part of the law doesn't really apply in this case right now because that part hasn't even gone into effect yet. But I think even if this was taking place a year later, he could still be arrested, which does seem crazy in a state that just legalized marijuana. But legalized should be in quotes, and legalized means a lot of different things in a lot of different states. And in California, it certainly doesn't mean that anyone that that wants can have any amount of marijuana they want, and it certainly doesn't mean that anyone that wants can sell marijuana, because that is certainly not the case.
I guess it would be similar to if he was caught selling moonshine in Kentucky.
I guess.
Right? You can't
I don't know the intricacies
so.
of the moonshine laws in Kentucky, but sure.
Well, I'm just saying that liquor is not. It's legalized. You can drink liquor all over the place, but you can't just make moonshine in your bathtub. At least in most places you can't. Maybe some counties and states you can. I'm
probably
not sure,
can't open a moonshine stand in the front on the corner of the street anyway.
Probably not.
Especially not
yet,
a drive-through.
That
would draw some attention.
Until we take over. Until the libertarians take over, and then instead of lemonade stands, we're going to have moonshine stands.
That's what our libertarian utopia is going to be, folks. Drive-through moonshine stands for everybody. And the roads will all be owned by tyrants who don't have DUI laws, but they charge $1,000 to go through them. So it's going to be interesting times. I don't know how you're going to have much money left for the moonshine when you're spending all your money on tolls, but...
that was you're referring to that post in the forum from this week?
Yeah, I think I did see something
there was a post in the forum, telling a story about one of our members was telling a story about they were in an argument with another person, and they were saying,
who was it? They'll know if they're listening.
And the argument happening, and of course the person comes back at our Libertarian Forum members saying, well, what if the person who owns the road decides to charge $1,000?
Hey, I know who it was. It was Sam Schiller. Sam Schiller, shout out for you. We're talking about your post.
Sam Schiller.
You can become famous if you're in the Lions Liberty Forum. We might even mention your name.
And I think I commented back on it that, well, it's the same thing. What if you go to a restaurant, the restaurant owner says, well, for that steak, that's $1,000. Well, bye.
See you later. Gonna go kill some roadkill
It's a wonderful thing.
But something else I wanted to touch on, that some people might say, look, the NBA is allowed to make it, like, because part of this is he might end up being banned from the NBA for this. I mean, banned because of this felony. If he ends up being convicted of a felony, now he may plea his way out of this or something like that. I don't know. But as of right now, with a possible felony charge, he would be banned from the NBA. So that's a big deal. It's obviously going to affect his livelihood. I think he's something like an 8-year, 10-year veteran. He's been around a while. I'm sure he's made plenty of money in his day. I don't know how he's invested it. I have no information on that. He might need to keep working. I don't really know. But who knows? Maybe if he gets the felony, he'll just open a legal dispensary and channel his passion to earn some income for the rest of his life. But many people will say that the NBA has the right to ban him, to set their own rules about these things, and they do. But I think we should point out and just make it clear, without the war on drugs, without the federal prohibition on marijuana, most of these sports organizations would not have these rules in the first place. The only reason they do is because of the federal laws. So, it's kind of a circular argument, and we can say, they're a private company, yada, yada, yada. First of all, it's arguable how private any of these major sports organizations are, but that's kind of a conversation for a different day. But yeah, at the end of the day, the war on drugs and the federal prohibition is the problem here. So if that wasn't there, I doubt this would even be an issue in a kind of society where this wasn't prohibited in this way.
Yeah, maybe we'll take that sports cronyism discussion offline into the Lions of Liberty Pride. And Mark and I have a couple more felonies to talk about that we're going to be doing a soon-to-be released episode in the Pride talking about those felonies. And you can join the Lions of Liberty Pride at our highest level, the $25 level, where you get a monthly call with us, where you can really do whatever you want. It's basically a libertarians in living rooms drinking liquor that's not recorded. It's just shooting the shit with us, talking about the show, bringing up ideas. It's a great time. And also, you get 2 free T-shirts at that level. You get a free koozie. Of course, you get access to all of our exclusive audio content, and you get a discount.
Our highest possible discount.
Yeah, you get the same price.
We literally
pay,
don't make money if you join that level. You can just basically get everything for the same price we made it at.
On some items, we lose money, so you're welcome.
I didn't want to bring that up because it makes me sad, but that's how much we care.
A little bit sad, but we do have 2 more levels, though. $10. You don't get as much. You don't get the call. You do get a discount, a little bit less, 20% off. You do get the free shirt. You get the koozie, and, of course, the audio content. And at $5, if you have that to spare for us, you'll get all of our audio content, and you also get the discount as well. And with all the levels, you get access to our secret Pride Facebook group.
Something I should point out while we're promoting here, we are only $5 away from our very first goal. Our very first goal level was $300 a month, at which point we're going to really start. We've already started, spoiler alert, because we got so close. We're going to start buying some equipment upgrades, and we already started to do that. I got a new mixer that we're going to use from some in-person records when my man Rico is in town, and Brian will use it for that too. And then we're all getting some microphone upgrades. So we're starting to do this even though we're $5 away from the goal, but only $5 left to officially hit it, guys. So thank you to everyone who has contributed to help us reach these goals. And, and we appreciate all the support.
And after the 300 goal, there is a 1,000 goal. And that's really, in my mind, I think that's the game changer. That's when we're able to, and we're not taking this money for ourselves. It's all going back into the show. But $1,000, that's when we're going to be able to really reach out and start to advertise on other libertarian podcasts and really get our name out there and grow this show. And you can be a part of it. You can be a part of it for just $5 a month. So please consider doing that. We really do appreciate it. Also, easier way, if you don't have the $5, you can really help us out by going to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a nice little review there. Really helps us out with all their algorithms ranking the podcast. And lastly, but not leastly, Donor C. We've seen a tremendous impact from a bunch of different libertarian organizations, podcasts, groups coming together under the Walk the Walk banner. We don't just talk the talk as libertarians, we walk the walk. That is a Facebook group founded by Clint Rankin, who is a forum member and Pride member here at Lions of Liberty. And we've done a lot of different things. We've helped a woman to get some job training, get HIV medication. We've helped to build a well. We've helped to build a road. And now in Haiti, where there's been, obviously with the earthquake several years ago, there was a bunch of influx of people trying to help out. Of course, there's the Tories Clintons were there trying to help, but there's still lots of help needed in Haiti. And one of the big problems was with litter. And there's plastic bottles everywhere, litter everywhere. And as a way to solve that problem, there's a great cause at Donor C where they're taking all these plastic bottles and they're building a house out of it, which I think is just awesome. I mean, for libertarians to be able to fund an idea like this by really killing two birds with one stone, not only are we solving the waste problem, the environmental problem, we're actually putting it to use and we're building something, which I think is awesome. So you can check that out. You can go to my profile, Mark's profile, Clint Rankin's profile on Donor C and find it there. And I don't know how close we are. We were getting a couple $100 left, I think, a few $100 left before we got to that. But anyway, that's all I got for today, guys. Anything else to add, Mark, before I say goodbye?
No, just that I concur with what you're about to say. I too want to keep the fires of liberty burning and keep my head up high. Not necessarily in that order.
Well, this is John Odermatt and Mark Blair signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.
Ow! At liberty, it's so hot!